For years, British and Empire infantry carried their kit and ammunition in an arrangement of pouches and packs collectively known as knapsack equipment. What had been sufficient in the muzzle-loading era was soon replaced in the Martini era by a distinctively evolutionary development in the form of the pattern 1871 valise equipment. Yet, in the space of just a few years, another set of equipment made its debut. This was simply known as the pattern 1882 valise equipment. Shortcomings of the P71 equipment had become evident, and the 82 version made efforts to address them. The two waist belt ammunition pouches, each holding 20 rounds, and the somewhat awkward expense pouch holding up to 30 rounds, were replaced by two larger pouches in the 82 pattern version, each holding 40 rounds. An internal flap was provided to prevent loose rounds from falling out. Another major difference was the valise, specifically its position on the back. The 71 pattern valise had been carried low, slung by the braces and other supporting straps across the soldier's rear, with the mess tin atop and the greatcoat strapped to the braces above. This arrangement was prone to excessive movement when doubling, and was also seen by some as being somewhat unmilitary. The 82 pattern valise incorporated the stowage of the greatcoat and was moved to a position rather higher on the back, with the top of the valise in line with the man's armpit. This stabilized the load to a degree, as well as simplified the stowage of kit. Another difference initially was the change to a water bottle carried by a spring clip on the belt. Although this left the chest encumbered by one less strap, it was eventually superseded by a return to the pattern carried with the P71 equipment, with the water bottle suspended on a strap. As with the earlier version, there were various orders of dress. Marching order with the valise, braces, belt, and ammunition pouches, as well as a number of lighter orders, chiefly differing in the omission of the valise. With these lighter orders of dress, there was a marked difference in the way the braces were affixed to the set, for the carriage of the load. Now, instead of crossing the back and under the arms, they crossed the back and were attached, or rather looped through, two brass D-rings built into the belt for this purpose. This had the effect of supporting the back of the belt and the weight of any kit or equipment strapped to it. The ends of the braces, once looped through the D-rings on the belt, were brought under the arms and buckled to the brace ring. As mentioned, in marching order, the valise was carried at the small of the back with the mess tin on top. In this view, as an expedient, I fixed my shooting mat under the flap of the valise. According to the regulation, however, the greatcoat was carried inside the valise, leaving a clean, squarish profile. This view shows in detail the way the valise was suspended by the braces. They were drawn over the shoulder and buckled to the top edge of the valise through buckles provided for that purpose. They were then threaded through a couple of brass D-rings and back to the brace ring under the armpit. The bottom edge of the valise was supported by two separate valise straps, also attached to the brace ring. In what might today be termed fighting order, the valise was removed from the set, and in its place, the rolled greatcoat and mess tin were strapped to the back of the belt. This was done by using the various straps used to secure and support the valise when worn on the back, providing an interesting and efficient double use of the existing straps that came with the set. The 82 pattern valise equipment was never universally issued, and it was primarily found in home service battalions. Many units skipped its issue completely and transitioned directly from the P71 to the later P88 or Slade Wallace equipment. The 82 pattern equipment would soldier on into the 20th century, used to equip second line and volunteer units during the Boer War. My set of pattern 82 valise equipment was happened on somewhat by chance, and was second-hand, although not used at all. Up until that time, I had not put much effort into finding a set, but the price was exceptionally reasonable this time, so home it came. I'm not quite sure as to the source of this particular set of equipment, but I have my suspicions that it came out of the UK. The quality was quite good in the form of its stitching and the leather. However, there were a few details that were somewhat lacking. The brass D-rings in the back of the belt will eventually need to be replaced. I at once found that the ammunition pouches, although proportioned decently and of quality construction, were in fact just a little bit too narrow to hold the requisite number of ammunition packets, so I set about making my own replacement set. Thankfully, the construction of these pouches is quite simple, and I was able to fashion them with little drama. The new ones, being almost a half-inch wider, hold the requisite 4 packets of ammunition with ease. As a reference for making these pouches, I used P.R. Turner's excellent book, Soldiers' Accoutrements of the British Army. The diagrams are clear and fully to scale. I also used this book to complete the other major component of this set that was not included. This, of course, was the valise. The valise is a simple affair, without any stiffening, made of oilskin and canvas, with leather binding and straps. It holds all the components of my shooting kit comfortably, although the shooting mat with its extra bulk poses somewhat of a challenge. The shooting rest sits atop the valise in the place of a mess tin, while the shooting mat, because of its extra bulk, can't fit inside the valise with all the other shooting equipment I carry. Therefore, I strap it underneath the flap. As you can see here, the valise was somewhat open in construction, with a number of flaps that overlapped each other, securing its contents. For historical shooting purposes, this set is pretty much perfect. The pouches now hold the correct number of rounds and are easily accessible. The set can be configured in, well, let's call it marching order, with the complete shooting kit in the valise, or a lighter order, with the shooting mat and aiming rest strapped on the back of the belt in place of greatcoat and mess kit. Either way, after some initial adjustment, the set seems rather balanced, with the weight of the ammunition being offset by either the valise or the rolled mat and aiming rest. Some degree of adjustment is required, however, to prevent the braces from cutting under the arms. Access to ammunition seems to be okay. Once the outer flap is opened and the inner flap is moved out of the way, loose ammunition stored on top of the paper packets in the bottom of the pouch can be easily removed and loaded into the rifle. That said, a somewhat awkward characteristic of these large pouches is once the paper packets have been depleted and used up, cavities are left inside the pouch in which loose ammunition falls down into and makes for a rather hard extraction. Like most infantry equipment, these foibles can be overcome with practice and repetition of use. One such method I've found is to empty the left-hand pouch first, by emptying the paper packets from that pouch into the right-hand pouch on top of the stored packets in that pouch. The loose ammunition is kept easily accessible underneath the inner flap. Of course, this leads to a problem perhaps of one side becoming imbalanced in relation to the other. But as an expedient, using 10 rounds at a time only, things seem to be pretty manageable, especially when the braces are adjusted correctly. Redistribution of the ammunition in the pouches during a lull would definitely be a priority. In these views, you can see the resemblance to a later pattern of equipment, that being the Slade Wallace or P82 valise equipment. The larger ammunition pouches, but in particular the way the greatcoat and mess tin are strapped to the back of the belt, indicate that this was a good idea taken forward to the next pattern of equipment. This view shows with clarity the way the braces were looped through the brass D-rings at the back of the belt, then under the arm and attached to the brace ring. You can also see here the comparative bulk of a fully loaded 40-round pouch. The weight of 80 rounds at the front of the belt is considerable, but attention to the adjustment of the braces seems to mitigate this effectively. All in all, the 82 pattern equipment must be seen as an evolutionary step. It combined features of patterns that came before it, as well as features that were used from it and carried forward to the next. It saw somewhat limited service about the globe and continued to soldier on into the 20th century. So in this capacity alone, it must be seen as an important aspect of British infantry equipment of the late 19th century. If you'll permit me this small indulgence, I'd like to give a shout out to a friend of the channel, Rob McDonald. He presented me this Elizabethan buckle that I used to replace the snake clasp that came with the set. It differs in detail from the Victorian version, but for what I'm using it for, it fits just fine. As it happens, Rob also runs a very successful business as a bespoke kilt maker. So if you're in the market, drop him a line. His contact info is in the description below.